Montgomery County has many landmark buildings, schools, roadways, and parks. While many are named after familiar people, Martin Luther King Jr., John F. Kennedy, and Clara Barton, to name a few, some may be less familiar. Who is Gwendolyn Caulfield? Matthew Henson, Stella Werner. Join us as we travel around the county and find out about our local heroes.
The Gwendolyn E. Caulfield Community Recreation Center is located at 2450 Littonsville Road in Silver Spring. Opened in 2000, it features a gym, exercise rooms, an all-purpose room, playgrounds, courts, and fields. So who was Gwendolyn Caulfield, and why was a rec center named in her honor?
Gwen was a lifetime member of this community, the Littonsville community. Her heart and soul was in this community. I should mention that my family has been 5 generations in Littonsville, and so we all grew up here. She, from an early age, was always very civic-minded. She had a vision. She always had visions, and she could sort of make things happen. People respected her, and she was really very busy.
Gwendolyn Elzenia Caulfield was born on June 30th, 1931. As an adult, she was active in the Littonsville Civic Association, as well as the Pilgrim Baptist Church Sunday School, where she taught for 17 years. She was also the founder and the first coordinator of the Rosemary Hills Community School, a position she held from 1970 to her death in 1996.
She initiated the Foreign Language Program, EOSL program, for students of other languages. She developed the classes. She scheduled, she organized them, she brought in teachers, all volunteers.
Gwen was also instrumental in the redevelopment of the Littonsville community.
From back in the day when it was just a very rural community with no paved streets, no running water, she was able to get the county to get the streets paved, to get the community redeveloped. And she was also instrumental in getting friendly gardens put in across the street from where we are now. Her thought was to have people who were in the old community who were not able to buy back into the community after redevelopment, to have them close by or in the community, and the friendly gardens was the answer to that. She understood the county government and how it worked, and she was able to work with people. She was able to get them to do things that no one thought could happen.
She also understood that food was a good tool to rally people.
Someone once asked her, well, how were you able to get such and such thing happening? She said, well, how can they say no with a mouthful of bread pudding? So she had an excellent sense of humor.
Well, there's not a lot of information available about Jessup Blair, but the house on the property was built in the mid-1800s by Francis Preston Blair, who was the founder of Silver Spring.
Francis Blair brought his family to Washington from Kentucky at the invitation of President Andrew Jackson to publish a newspaper supporting his administration. Between 1842 and 1854, the Blairs built 3 summer homes, including the one at Jessup Blair Park, for their son James and his wife Mary Jessup Blair. James was a naval officer who made his fortune during the 1849 gold rush in California. James and Mary named the house the Moorings.
They left the property to their daughter, Violet Blair Janin, who dedicated the house and property for public use in her will, but she changed the name of the house to the Jessup Blair House in honor of her brother. So the house served as the Silver Spring Library from about 1934 to 1957, and then it later became a public park.
It is currently under renovation. Some children call the Noyes Library in Kensington the No Yes Library. Others think its name is based on the fact that they can be noisy inside. Either way, it's a hit with kids.
We're here in front of the Noyes Library for Young Children, which is the oldest freestanding public library in the Washington area as a building. This little library was built in 1893 and became a library for children in the late 1970s. And then we began to refocus on early literacy from birth through about age 7 or 8 in the early 2000s. So it's a small library, very dear to the children who've grown up here and the people in the community who come to visit.
The library was named after Crosby Noyes, who along with Brainerd Werner built it in 1893 as a neighborhood library for the new town of Kensington. From the start, the Noyes Library was the social center of Kensington life. It not only served as a library, but a place for town hall meetings and other gatherings.
Noyes has been part of Montgomery County Public Libraries since its inception in the early 1950s. It was an independent library before then, now part of Montgomery County's system. The programs are all featured on the county library's website. Well, Noyes is lucky to have a very strong advocate for its current and future health in the form of the Noyes Library Foundation. This private foundation stepped up in the early 90s and again about 6 or 8 years ago to help continue library services and programs during downturns in the general economy. And they are now engaged in helping to vision some renovations to this little library that will extend its life another 120 years or so.
The Noyes Library is open Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, with the occasional Wednesday morning for special programming. The Stella Werner Council Office Building sits at the intersection of Maryland Avenue and Route 28 in Rockville. It's where the Montgomery County Council offices and hearing rooms are located, as well as county executive departments. The building was named after Stella Biddison Werner.
In the 1940s, she was one of the proponents of the county's home rule, and she was then served on the first county council in the 1950s and was the first woman to be elected president of the county council.
Stella Werner was born in Baltimore in 1901. Her father was a Maryland state senator, and her great-grandfather served in the Maryland legislature. In 1925, she married John Werner and moved to Montgomery County in 1928. Always civic-minded, she organized the Women's Democratic Club of Leland, served as PTA president for Bethesda Elementary School, and helped establish the Bethesda Public Library and the BCC Recreation Center. Eventually, Stella Werner took her enthusiasm to county politics. Beginning in 1950, she served for 3 terms on the Montgomery County Council. In addition to public office, Werner was an active member of the Methodist Church and taught Sunday school for 34 years. She died in 1981 at the age of 80.
Matthew Henson was an Arctic explorer, the first African-American explorer to discover the North Pole with Admiral Robert Peary.
Henson was born in 1866 in Charles County, Maryland, and lived as a child in Washington, D.C. At age 12, he made his way to Baltimore, where he went to sea as a cabin boy.
Now, in the late 1880s, he was hired by then Commander Robert Peary, who joined him off and on for the next 2 decades in their quest to reach the North Pole, which they did on April the 6th in 1909. So in 1912, Henson published his story, A Negro Explorer at the North Pole. And it's interesting, though, it's not until the end of his life and then posthumously that he begins to receive true recognition for this phenomenal feat. There are many awards and tributes that are given almost up until his death. He passes away in 1955 and is reinterred in 1988, actually, in Arlington National Cemetery, he and his wife. It's in 1996 that a naval ship, the USNS Henson, is commissioned in his honor. And then in 2000, the National Geographic Society gives him their highest honor, which is the Hubbard Medal for distinction in exploration, discovery, and research. We here at Montgomery Park are thrilled to have one of our newest trails named in honor of him. It's part of the state Matthew Henson State Park.
It runs along the Turkey Branch of Rock Creek from Aspen Hill to Lay Hill and features a 4.2-mile, 8-foot-wide hard surface trail for hiking and biking.
It has these fabulous wooden boardwalk along sensitive wetlands and forested areas. It is a true modern place of discovery.